So now that we've diagnosed the fret issues on this Epiphone, we're going to move into the leveling process. I'm going to show you how to do a full fret level on this guitar. Before you start any job like this, you want to select the right tools. So whether you have 1 or 2 high frets or you have a full fret level that needs to be done, the MusicNomad fret care tools have got you covered. If you have 1 or 2 high frets, you might choose the U files to level those. These are really good for spot leveling. You can use them under the strings, and you can identify 1 fret, level that down, then crown it and polish it, and that should take care of any buzzing issues you have with 1 high fret. If you have a guitar with multiple high frets, 4 or more, or you have other reasons that you want to do an entire fret level, you would be looking at using the L-beams. These come in 3 different lengths. This is a 7-inch beam. This would be used for spot leveling, say on the extension if you have a kick at the end of the fretboard. So the 17-inch beam would be used for an electric or acoustic guitar. It covers all the frets and enables you to get a really great, perfectly leveled fret surface. They also come in a 24-inch length if you have a bass. So the first step in doing a full fret level is taking the strings off the guitar and setting your neck as flat as you can make it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the strings and get them out of the way so that I can assess the neck for straightness. So as you're doing your initial neck adjustments, you need the strings out of the way. The cradle cube has a feature you can tuck them out of the way and get them off the fretboard. If you have a two-pneumatic equipped guitar, you can usually loosen the strings enough that you can just pop the stop tail piece completely off, and then you can lay that to the side, and with the string still on, that makes it a little easier. The strings are just completely out of the way. So now that I have my strings off, I'm going to gain access to my truss rod nut. This one happens to have 3 little Phillips screws. Most, if it's a Gibson, it's going to have 2. Fender, professional, Fender American, it's not going to have a truss rod cover. It's just going to have the hole for the truss rod wrench. So just act accordingly. Once I have that off and out of the way, I'm going to set my neck perfectly flat. So in order to assess my neck and get it as flat as possible, I'm going to use the MusicNomad Tri-Beam. So this is a notch straight edge, so you can check your fretboard level, and then it also has a regular straight edge, so you can check the fret tops. I'm going to do my initial adjustment using the notch straight edge to get my fretboard set perfectly flat. Now I am seeing that I'm hitting at the very end. I've got a little bit of a gap from the 11th fret up to the end. I'm touching in the middle and I'm touching at the end. So this is about as flat as this is going to get. It just has some imperfections in it. Whenever you set your neck flat, you can't really expect that it's going to be perfect. These guitars have variances from the factory, the wood moves, you're going to have little gaps here and there. What you're really trying to do is get it as flat as you can. So you can typically expect 3 points of contact. So like I have, it's contacting in the first position, middle of the neck, and at the end. Now, what I also like to do after I get the fretboard as flat as possible, I want to check the fret tops using the straight edge. Because if the frets are wildly out of level, you may find that it's better to level the neck using the fret tops so that you minimize the amount of fret removal. So I'm going to check the fret tops and just make sure that I'm kind of in the same plane as my fretboard. And I'm not getting any rock, so I know I don't have any back bow. The straight edge is not rocking in the middle. And I can see, I can definitely see some gaps. It is rocking on that 10th fret on the low E, but I knew that fret was high, so I'm not really surprised. But I'm getting the same thing. I can see it touching the first fret, touching in the middle of the neck, and hitting at the end. So this neck is pretty flat. I'm getting a little rock here and there, but it's on all of the frets that I'd already identified as high. So with the strings off, this guitar's neck happens to be perfectly flat, exactly the way I want it to be to level the frets. Now, if the neck would have gone into a back bow with the strings off, I would have needed to loosen the truss rod to decrease that back bow and bring the neck to flat. If the neck still stayed with relief in it, I would have needed to tighten the truss rod in order to bring it back to flat. chances are, if you've done your keep it simple setup method, you've got 6/1000 of an inch of relief in the neck. When you take the strings off, it is going to go either to dead flat or just a little bit of back bow. So you might have to back off the truss rod a little bit. There's very little chance it's going to have any relief in it with the strings off. But if it does, just give the truss rod a little tighten and you'll be in good shape. Now I have the neck set flat. So the next step is going to be to level the frets. There are a couple things I need to do to get the guitar ready for that. If you have a guitar that the nut is easily removed, I would go ahead and take the nut out. That enables you to move the beam with longer strokes. If you have a nut that is either finished over or it's heavily glued in, or if there's some reason that you don't feel comfortable removing the nut, you can leave it in. You're just going to you're going to only be able to move the beam with smaller strokes. It's fine, it just takes a little bit longer. But this guitar, I'm going to go ahead and knock this nut out with a piece of wood and a hammer. So this nut has no finish over it. It's not set down in a pocket. It should just be glued right to the edge of the fretboard. So I'm just going to give it a light rap with a hammer and it should just pop right out. And it did. Easy. A little bit of wood came off where the glue was, but that's no big deal. So now that the nut is removed and I can level the frets with the beam, I need to support the neck so that it isn't flexing whenever I am leveling the frets. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. If you have a wooden caul with cork in it that's specially made for this purpose, you can use that. If you have a bean bag, what I'm going to use today is just a towel rolled up to support the entire neck, which is completely adequate for the purposes of the fret level. Okay, so now I have the guitar set where when I put pressure on it, the headstock is not hitting the bench, and it's good and supported all the way up the length to the body. There's plenty of stiffness in the body to keep this from deflecting. So now I want to just look around and see, is there anything that's going to be in the way of the beam? So on a Les Paul, typically, and this guitar is no exception, your pickup ring is really close to the fretboard top. So as you're leveling, your beam is going to be coming out above your pickup. And so you want to make sure that the beam is not going to contact the pickup adjustment screws or hit the pickup ring. You can do that by taking your straight edge and extending it over the pickup. This is going to be pretty close on those pickup height screws. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the pick guard and this pickup, and I can lay the pickup off to the side. You don't typically have to desolder it or do anything fancy. You can just remove the 4 pickup ring screws, and there's typically enough wire to be able to just lay the pickup over. You can put a cloth on your guitar or something to keep it from scratching. But let's pull the screws out and see what we find. So you can use the screwdriver if you have a truss rod adjustment kit. You can just use the screwdriver that comes in that, or just any Phillips. But you don't want to hope for the best on this. If you think that it's going to hit anything, you just need to get it out of the way, because you certainly don't want to damage your guitar. This process is easy to do without damaging your guitar, but you do just have to be aware of a couple of things. So we'll get this pulled out. If the ring is lower, you can just lower down the pickup and not worry about it, but this is all just very close to the top of the fret plane. So there's our pickup ring screws. I'm going to get this pick guard taken off just because it's pretty close to the fretboard as well. So off comes our pick guard, and then sure enough, we can lay this pickup off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and grab a microfiber cloth to lay on the guitar to make sure that nothing gets scratched. So I'm going to lay a cloth here, just flip this over to the side. Now that's out of the way, and I have clear access to the fret tops, and I can do my level now. So the beam that I'm going to use is the 17-inch MusicNomad L beam. This is long enough to span all of the frets, and it will make them all perfectly level with one another. The downside of using a smaller beam for a full fret level is that they have a tendency to kind of ride the imperfections. So if you have a neck that has a back bow and then a kick at the end of the fretboard, if you use a short beam, it can follow that contour and it can keep you from getting a perfectly level fret plane. So using a beam that spans all of the frets, you are sure that all the fret tops are perfectly level with one another. There are a few things that are really cool about the MusicNomad L beam. It's really ergonomic. It has a nice hourglass shape, so it's really easy to grip. The ends are beveled so that you don't bang into and ding frets that are high as you're starting the leveling process. And it comes with 3M Stick It Gold paper that is in 240 grit and 400 grit. So I'm going to use the 240 first to do my initial level. It's a good grit for fairly fast fret material removal, but it's not overly aggressive, so it's going to leave you with a pretty good finish. And once we get it down to level with the 240, we're going to flip it over, use the 400 for the final last little bit of level. So in the leveling process, the end goal that you're looking for is for every fret to have been touched by the beam. So that ensures that all the fret tops are on the same plane. Now, when I am leveling, I don't use any marker or any indicator on the tops of the frets. I find that I can just see the scoring marks on the top, and it's really not an issue for me to know when I'm finished. But if you're newer at doing this and you want to be sure that you have a good visual, you can take a marker and you can mark the tops of the frets, and then you'll know that you've hit all the frets because you can see that the marker's gone. So I'm going to go ahead and just mark my fret tops with black marker. If you have a maple fretboard, you certainly want to be sure that you don't drag the Sharpie off onto your fretboard because you will leave a mark on it. Rosewood, ebony are a little more forgiving because you can just steel wool it out. But if you have a finished board, you really want to try to avoid getting Sharpie on the board. This whole process is definitely achievable, step by step, but you want to be careful and you want to pay attention as you're going. So with my 240 side down, I'm going to put that directly on the frets, and I'm going to, I like to hold the headstock just to keep the guitar from moving, but I'm just going to gently move the beam back and forth on the tops of the frets. And I'm just right in the center of the fretboard right now. But what I'm going to do is as I'm leveling, I'm going to fan the board out to the side, and I'm going to cross all the way across the frets so that I get all the frets from edge to edge. Now, a couple things that you want to remember as you're doing this. You don't want to hang the beam off the side at an angle because you will break the corner where the crown meets the bevel, and you can really wash out the ends of your frets, and that will cause them not only to be unlevel, but to make it where your string will fall off the fret more easily. So you want to make sure that you just keep it's almost level as it goes across, but you do have to follow the curvature of the fretboard as you are leveling, but you don't want to get way off to one side or the other. So as I'm doing this, I can already see, just from those few strokes, I can already see the frets that I had marked as high. My 3rd fret I'm hitting, my 14th fret I'm hitting, and my 19th fret I'm hitting. So that's already happening. So now as I come in, I'm going to just move this back and forth across. I'm coming out to the high E side, coming back over. Now I can feel it rocking on my 10th fret. So as I'm leveling this, I'm noticing that on the low E side, the beam is actually rocking on my 10th fret. And I don't want that to happen, because what will happen is the beam will kind of ride on the 1st and 10th fret, and then it'll go on the 10th and the last fret, and it can make a back bow in the neck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 10th fret down with the U file. I'm just going to do a quick preliminary level on that to get that down and out of the way. So I'll take my U file, I'm just going to level that down. And even if you don't go all the way, that's fine, but you definitely want to have it where you don't have any noticeable rock with the beam. Still have just a tiny bit. There's probably a couple of other little fret imperfections here. That's the thing. Once you get, 4 or more frets, there probably are other things going on. So, finding other imperfections is pretty much standard fare. So now I'll get in here and move over to the low side. I'm just going to come across, keep going back and forth. So as you can see, I'm trying to keep the beam in line with the string path. I'm not keeping it parallel to the center line. I'm kind of angling it one direction on the high E and the other direction on the low E. So you're going to have a little bit shorter travel across at the first fret and a little bit more travel at the last fret. If you have a hard time doing that at first, don't sweat it. You'll get it with practice. But you want to try to follow the string line. And I can stop and check and see what I've got. So I have just a little bit left that I haven't quite hit. I've got some black marker here on my 13th fret, got a little bit on my 9th over here, but I can definitely see I'm taking a lot of material off of the areas where I measured that there were high frets. So I'm just going to keep going until I reach those final few low spots. Now, one thing I'd like to mention is I have on my 9th fret, I have a spot right around the B string that's a little bit low. I wouldn't want to just stay on that B and just hog and hog and hog right in that area. You can stay kind of in that general area, but you do need to work the beam back and forth and not just make one flat spot on the fret top. That will just cause problems when you're leveling the fret. And you want to try to preserve your radius as much as you can by fanning the beam across, even if you are trying to get out just one low area. Okay, now I'm starting to get down to that low spot on that 9th fret. I just took the marker off. And now I've got just a tiny bit out here on my low E string. So I'm just going to kind of come over to the low E, go back up to the middle, come over to the low E, back up to the middle. I'm just trying to preserve that fret radius and not spend too much time in one area. Okay, so now I have hit all the frets. I've taken off all of the marker. So now that I've got everything level with the 240, I'm going to go ahead and hit the fret tops lightly with the 400 just to take out some of the sanding marks. So whenever you are crowning your fret tops, you will have less work to do when it comes to the final polishing process. I'll take my 400. Give it a few swipes across. That looks really good. I've hit all my fret tops. You can definitely, when you do this on your guitar, you're going to notice that there are some areas of the frets are going to have wider flat spots. Some are going to be narrower. The wider spots are areas where the frets were high. And so you've taken them down farther into the fret crown, so it's wider. The areas that are narrow were the lowest spots, and so you barely hit those, so you still have a pretty fresh fret crown. Now's the time to clean your fretboard. A vacuum is really the best thing. I have a shop vac, so I'm just going to quickly vacuum off the fretboard. So now that I've got the frets leveled and I've cleaned up all my metal dust, I'm going to check my fret level with my long beam. And just, remember, this may all look very complicated, but, if you just take it slow and are careful, you can totally do this. The tools make it really easy. You've got gauges to check your progress, and, you're not going to make one move and all of a sudden your guitar's messed up. If you're slow and steady, you'll do fine. So now I'm going to check my fret tops for anything that's out of level. If I'm looking for any space between the beam and the fret tops, and I had a lot of space in a lot of different areas beforehand, and now I am looking really good. I'm not identifying any gaps between any of the frets and the beam. You just want to look, you just want to go fret to fret and just look and see if there's any space. If you think there is, an easy way to find out is grab your fret level feeler gauge, and you can just set your beam down and try to put it through, and it isn't going to go because you've got a good fret level here. So that is the leveling part of the process. Not too bad. It doesn't take very long. So now we have we're confident we have a good level fret plane, and now I'm going to take you into the next step, which is the crowning of the frets. So the leveling process completed has achieved a perfectly level fret plane. So if you remember when I played this guitar, it had buzzes, localized buzzing. We had some high and low frets. And after doing the leveling, I can see that there were other fret leveling issues that I didn't even pick up because I see a differential in the width of the line that's left after the leveling. So now we have a perfectly true fret plane, which is going to allow us to have a nice low action, and we're going to have a good clean playability all up and down the neck because we've removed any of the high and low spots. So at this point, I consider the level finished, and I'm going to move on to crowning and polishing. But if it's your first time, you're a little unsure of your work, if you want to, you could string the guitar back up and play it and make sure that it does play cleanly for you. The one thing to note is that because your fret tops are flat, you might have some overtones or some sitaring type of sounds because the frets are not crowned correctly. So being able to differentiate between actual fret buzz and noises made because the frets are not crowned correctly may or may not be something that you can do. But, if you want to just make sure they're level, it plays pretty clean, you can string it up and check it now before you do the crowning. I don't typically find it necessary, but it is an option.
For more videos on how to perform guitar setups or care for your frets, subscribe to our channel and visit musicnomadcare.com for all our products and how-to videos.